Late at night, a conductor slowly makes his way through the carriages of a moving train, his footsteps echoing in the eerie silence. As he checks to ensure the train is empty, the lights start to flicker. A sense of unease washes over him, and he turns to see a marked demon lurking in the shadows. Fear grips him, and he attempts to run, but the demon is too quick. He is killed, his lifeless body left behind to be discovered later, a grim testament to the terror that transpired. The next day, a demon slayer enters a humble soba shop, guided by the cawing of a Kasugai crow. Inside, he spots the flame Hashira, Kyojuro Rengoku, enjoying his meal. With a polite apology for the interruption, the demon slayer is invited to join him. Rengoku, always kind and hospitable, asks the chef to serve a bowl of soba for his new companion. As they eat, the two warriors discuss a harrowing incident from the previous night. They had come across a woman who had been brutally attacked by a demon. Fortunately, she survived and is now recovering in the hospital. The conversation shifts as Rengoku inquires about the soba shop's business. The chef, with a worried expression, explains that fear has gripped the town. People are too scared to venture out after dark due to rumors of a slasher prowling the streets, forcing him to lay off his workers. He also mentions the unsettling news about the Mugen train, which was taken out of service after 40 passengers mysteriously vanished. The demon slayer tells Rengoku where to find the Mugen train, and they prepare to investigate the mysterious disappearances linked to it. At a nearby empty train station, a young girl named Fuku is upset because no one is buying her bentos. Her grandmother tries to cheer her up, suggesting she try selling them again later and reminding her that demons only come out at night. Rengoku and the demon slayer search the station, but find nothing unusual. They see Fuku, who is frustrated and doesn't believe in demons. Rengoku approaches her, mentioning he is looking for a demon, which surprises the demon slayer. Fuku, annoyed and nervous about recent news, throws a bean bun at Rengoku. She apologizes, explaining her fear of the slasher. Rengoku reassures her and decides to buy all her bentos, giving some to the demon slayer as gifts for their headquarters. Rengoku boards a train with the bentos and asks the conductor for directions to the Mugen train's maintenance facility. The conductor points out the correct location, and Rengoku jumps off the train to head towards it. He arrives at the facility, where he detects a faint demon scent near the train undergoing repairs. As Rengoku approached the train, the chief engineer accused him of trespassing. Rengoku calmly explained that he was delivering food to the workers. While handing out bentos, Rengoku asked about the Mugen train and learned it was rumored to be a man-eating train, but was still set to return to service after repairs. Suddenly, a scream pierced the air. Rengoku rushed to find a demon attacking a young boy, digging its claws into the child's face. The workers, horrified, watched as the demon crushed a bento box and sneered at the human food. The demon coldly explained that he only ate humans who looked tasty and tormented others. The demon's markings glowed eerily as he taunted Rengoku and darted around with incredible speed. The workers fled in fear, but Rengoku stood firm. The demon boasted about his speed and hinted that it was impossible for Rengoku to kill him without harming the boy. He also bragged about injuring a woman the previous night, making Rengoku realize he was responsible for her suffering. Determined, Rengoku warned the demon not to be arrogant and assured him the woman was recovering. As the demon targeted the bento vendors for revenge, Rengoku leaped forward and severed the demon's hands, saving the boy just in time. The demon, feeling the need to regroup, moves away from the shed and positions itself outside. It picks up the scent of the station, where the vendors are likely situated, and quickly heads in their direction, intent on causing harm. Rengoku, ever the calm and composed warrior, carefully examines the injuries of the young boy. He reassures the anxious workers, telling them that his companions will soon arrive to help. True to his word, more demon slayers make their way to assist him. Meanwhile, Fuku and her grandmother reach the station, and Fuku starts setting up her stall. Not long after, the demon arrives, catching their scent in the air. Determined to protect them, Rengoku decides to leave the rest to his allies and takes off down the train tracks. Using total concentration breathing, he pushes himself to extraordinary speeds, fueled by his resolve to stop the demon and save those in danger. The demon was closing in on Fuku, ready to end her life, when suddenly, a bento box, hurled with surprising force by her grandmother, struck the demon. The unpleasant aroma from the bento momentarily repulsed the demon, giving Fuku a brief chance to escape. However, before she could get far, the demon seized her with fierce hands, gripping her throat tightly. Just as the demon was about to deliver the fatal blow, Rengoku appeared out of nowhere. With a swift, precise strike, he sliced through the demon's Achilles tendon, rescuing Fuku from the brink of death. The shock of the rescue left Fuku in a daze as she realized her grandmother was now left vulnerable and alone. The demon, still seething, turned its anger toward her for the bento box, but Rengoku intervened. With a look of determined focus, he addressed the demon, his words a stern reminder not to underestimate him. The demon was left astonished, trying to comprehend how Rengoku had managed to close the distance so quickly. The demon issues a daunting challenge, a race to see who will act first, whether he will manage to kill Fuku's grandmother before Rengoku can sever his head. In response, Rengoku modestly suggests he is slow, but in a flash, he lunges forward, his movements a blur as he swiftly decapitates the demon with the flame-breathing's first form, unknowing fire. With the demon's head now severed, Rengoku performs a graceful yet purposeful chiburi. He carefully slides the demon's blood off the blade of his Nichiren sword, his actions meticulous as he drags the blunt end of the Kasaki along the koiguchi of the scabbard. Finally, he sheathes the sword with a practiced noto, the blade sliding smoothly back into its resting place. His actions unexpectedly stirred memories for Fuku's grandmother, taking her back 2 decades. She recalled how, long ago, the previous flame Hashira had shielded her from a demon, saving her and her daughter, Fuku's mother. The sight of Rengoku's Hari and the way he sheathed his blade brought tears to her eyes, as it reminded her of the hero who had once rescued her. Overwhelmed with emotion, she shared her memories with Rengoku, who gently suggested that it was likely his father who had come to her aid. Rengoku continued his father's legacy by fighting demons. Fuku, feeling regret for not believing in demons before, apologized to her grandmother. Rengoku, with a laugh, reassured them that doubting demons helped keep the darkness away. When other demon slayers arrived, Rengoku told them the demon was defeated, and the Mugen train would be repaired by the next day. However, he revealed that 40 people were missing from the train, and the defeated demon might not be the main threat. He suspected a stronger demon was hidden on the train. As the new day began, the city buzzed with activity. A soba chef heard the Mugen train was back in service and hoped for a better experience. That evening, Rengoku boarded the train to investigate and had a touching reunion with Fuku and her grandmother. They gave him beef bento boxes as thanks for his help, which he happily accepted. As the train prepared to leave, Fuku sold bento boxes to passengers. Suddenly, a commotion erupted with Inosuke headbutting the train and Zenitsu scolding him. Inside, Rengoku enjoyed his bento box, delighting in its taste and feeling ready for the journey ahead. Tanjiro, Zenitsu, and Inosuke boarded the Mugen train for their mission to join the Flame Hashira, Kyojuro Rengoku. Inosuke, who had never been on a train before, was thrilled and kept interrupting other passengers, much to Zenitsu's annoyance. While exploring the train, they heard someone repeatedly shouting, "Delicious!" This turned out to be Kyojuro Rengoku, who was enjoying his bento boxes. After he finished eating, Tanjiro introduced himself and his friends. Kyojuro quickly noticed Nezuko hidden in the box on Tanjiro's back. Zenitsu struggled to manage Inosuke's wild behavior, as Kyojuro asked Tanjiro why they were on the train. Tanjiro explained they were sent by a Kasugai crow to join him. Tanjiro also asked Kyojuro about his father's Hinokami Kagura breathing technique, but Kyojuro knew nothing about it. However, he praised Tanjiro's father for his combat skills and suggested Tanjiro become his apprentice. Kyojuro explained that within the Demon Slayer Corps, there is always a Flame Hashira and a Water Hashira. He also described the 5 core breathing forms: flame, water, wind, stone, and thunder, noting that other forms have evolved from these originals. Kyojuro asked Tanjiro about the color of his sword, learning that Tanjiro had never seen a Hashira with a black blade before. Excited, Kyojuro invited Tanjiro to train with him again, feeling relieved now that his question was answered. However, Tanjiro politely declined, even though Kyojuro's enthusiasm was evident. As Kyojuro took a break, Tanjiro sensed something unusual about him, but also felt his kindness and strong sense of justice. Meanwhile, Inosuke was enjoying the speed of the train, which annoyed Zenitsu. Kyojuro warned them that a demon might be near, causing Zenitsu to panic, thinking they were heading straight into danger. Kyojuro explained that 40 people had gone missing from the train, and the demon slayers sent to investigate hadn't returned. That's why he was called in. The tension increased when the train conductor entered the car to check tickets, with the flickering lights adding to the unease. Tanjiro noticed a bad smell, and Kyojuro grew suspicious of the conductor. The lights flickered wildly before a massive demon appeared, causing panic. Kyojuro sprang into action, using his flame-breathing technique to quickly defeat the demon with a precise strike, leaving Tanjiro and his friends amazed by his power and speed. Yet, before they could fully grasp the scene, Kyojuro's voice cut through the amazement. He calmly mentioned that another demon was still on board. Without hesitation, he moved ahead, urging Tanjiro and Inosuke to follow closely behind. Zenitsu, trembling with fear, nervously begged not to be left alone, his voice barely a whisper amidst the flickering lights. As the lights continued to flicker, the conductor and passengers had already fled, scrambling to the other side of the train to escape the menace of the demon. In the following car, chaos reigned as passengers scattered in a desperate bid for safety. Kyojuro stood firm, his gaze locked on the demon that was now targeting a lone, terrified passenger. With a commanding presence, he stepped forward, declaring his intention to take on the demon himself, ready to protect the innocent from harm. Inosuke, confident in his skills, charges directly at the demon, ignoring Tanjiro's advice to prioritize the passenger's safety. The demon's menacing arms stretch out to grab him, but Kyojuro arrives just in time to save Inosuke. He quickly instructs Inosuke to ensure the passenger's safety. With the passenger safe, Kyojuro, the Flame Hashira, prepares for the final attack. He uses his powerful flame-breathing technique, the Rising Scorching Sun, and defeats the demon with one strong blow. Tanjiro, Zenitsu, and Inosuke are amazed by Kyojuro's skill and express their desire to become his Chiguko. Kyojuro happily accepts them into his group. As the night grows quiet, the conductor, alone and distressed, kneels in an empty car, tearfully pleading to be reunited with his deceased family. A gentle, disembodied hand appears, offering comfort and telling him to go to sleep. The conductor falls into a peaceful sleep, free from his torment. Meanwhile, Tanjiro finds himself in a snowy forest, where he is joyfully reunited with his long-lost siblings, Shigeru and Hanako. Overcome with emotion, he embraces them, knocking them to the snow. Tanjiro hugs his family tightly, crying and apologizing repeatedly, leaving them confused. However, Tanjiro is actually still asleep on a train, trapped in a vivid dream. Up top, lower rank 1. Enmu watches with indifference. He thinks dying while dreaming is lucky and sees demon slayers as just as fragile as anyone else, believing their human spirit can be easily broken. Meanwhile, Enmu's minions tie ropes around the demon slayer's wrists and start counting to 10. Tanjiro's dream family, including Hanako, Takeo, Kie, Shigeru, and Rokuta, interact warmly, with Kie suggesting Tanjiro rest due to possible exhaustion. Despite their concern, Tanjiro feels content and explains he might just have had a bad dream. Enmu, however, has a dark plan. He watches Tanjiro as he sinks deeper into his dream, whispering that if he falls deeper, he will never wake up. Enmu, standing on the Mugen train, thought about how people who die in their sleep never wake up again. He believed that people's hearts and spiritual cores guided them, and that destroying these cores would trap them in an eternal sleep. He sensed Tanjiro sinking into his dreams, where he envisioned reuniting with his family. Zenitsu, in his dream, was in a forest with peach trees and Nezuko, who was his girlfriend. He carried her on his back, and they crossed rivers and mountains using Zenitsu's thunder-breathing technique. Inosuke's dream had him leading a cave expedition with Nezuko, Ponjiro, and Chuitsu. They encountered a fearsome beast, which turned out to be the Mugen train, and charged to confront it. Kyojuro dreamt of being at the Rengoku estate, telling his father about his Hashira promotion. His father dismissed his achievement, causing Kyojuro to feel heartbroken, but he found solace in his brother Senjuro's hope to gain their father's approval. Kyojuro reassured Senjuro, despite their father's lack of support. 4 children sent by Enmu entered their dreams using a special rope. Enmu explained that to weaken them, they had to find and destroy their spiritual cores. One girl, assigned to Kyojuro, managed to find his core, but was surprised when Kyojuro, even in his sleep, gripped her throat with surprising strength. In Tanjiro's dream, he is joyfully playing with his younger brother Rokuta, while their mother Kie prepares rice crackers for them. Takeo feels left out and asks for some crackers, with Hanako and Shigeru also expressing their desire for a taste. Outside, Tanjiro is chopping wood for the evening fire. After filling his basket, he heads home, mumbling for Nezuko. He realizes he's confused, as Nezuko isn't around, and his siblings tell him she went to pick vegetables. This makes him worried, but Kai then asks him to fetch water for a bath. As Tanjiro walks to the river, he notices strange things and sees Nezuko's box briefly before it vanishes. At the river, his reflection suddenly comes alive, warning him that he's under attack. Shocked, Tanjiro understands that he is dreaming and that he needs to wake up and fight. Struggling with the urgency, Tanjiro tries to return to reality, but finds himself still trapped in the dream. On a moving train, Nezuko's box tips over and she falls out. She sees Tanjiro and the other demon slayers lying unconscious. Hearing Tanjiro's weak whispers asking to wake up, Nezuko desperately tries to wake him. Frustrated, she headbutts him, causing her to bleed and cry. Despite her pain, she continues to try to rouse him, and her blood demon art begins to activate. In his dream, Tanjiro is surrounded by Nezuko's flames and the smell of her blood. Amidst the fire, he feels his Demon Slayer uniform and sword return, signaling that he's waking up. His siblings, Takeo and Hanako, are worried and ask if he's okay. Tanjiro, feeling a strong urge to leave, apologizes and runs into the woods, believing he needs to find a demon. He hears Nezuko's voice and turns to see her with vegetables. Her voice brings tears to his eyes as his family catches up, confused and worried. Tanjiro, feeling overwhelmed, wishes for the past when his family was alive and Nezuko was human. Despite this, he continues forward, burdened by his loss and accepting that he can never return to his old life. As Rokuta watches his oldest brother depart, a heart-wrenching cry escapes him, and he desperately tries to follow. Tanjiro, overwhelmed with emotion, can't help but shed tears, apologizing for the fact that they won't be able to be together again. With a heavy heart, he runs farther away, whispering that no matter what happens, they will always hold a special place in his heart. Meanwhile, the boy who had entered Tanjiro's dream finds himself in a serene and unexpectedly calm realm of Tanjiro's subconsciousness. Outside the train, Enmu feels a pang of confusion. The delay is puzzling. None of the spiritual cores have been destroyed as expected. However, he quickly shakes off his concern, choosing not to dwell on it. Tanjiro starts to understand that he's caught in a dream, but he can still catch the faint, unsettling scent of a demon lingering in the air. He's overwhelmed with worry about how he might save everyone from this predicament. In the midst of his confusion, his father, Tanjiro, suddenly appears before him, though only for a brief moment. Tanjiro's presence is both comforting and urgent as he advises Tanjiro to draw his sword, revealing that there's something that needs to be cut. As Tanjiro unsheathes his sword, a realization dawns on him about what he needs to do to break free from the dream. With a mix of determination and dread, he readies his blade, takes a deep breath, and resolutely presses the sword against his neck. In the quiet depths of Tanjiro's subconscious, where dreams meld with reality, his Nichiren sword is poised at his neck. Guided by the whispering echoes of his spirits, the boy within this dreamscape is led to the very heart of his spiritual core. Though urged to destroy it, he hesitates, his resolve wavering. As Tanjiro pushes the blade forward, the dream world begins to unravel, and he stirs from his slumber. The boy falls into a vast, dark void. But just as despair seems inevitable, Tanjiro's spirit reaches out, pulling him to safety. Meanwhile, in a different corner of the dream realm, a girl who is tasked with navigating Inosuke's subconscious finds herself lost in a shadowy, unsettling cave. The eerie darkness is punctuated by the primal sounds of Inosuke, now an almost feral presence, stalking her with an unrelenting pursuit. In another part of the dreamscape, a boy who is meant to handle Zenitsu's realm struggles within a boundless, pitch-black void. The sound of metal clashing grows nearer, and soon he faces Zenitsu, who brandishes a pair of garden shears with a fierce, menacing glare. Fueled by rage at the intruder, disrupting his dream, Zenitsu relentlessly chases the boy, tearing at his clothes with a frenzied anger. Tanjiro finally manages to cut through the ropes, binding his throat, and blinks awake, taking in his surroundings. Relief washes over him as he sees that Nezuko is safe. However, his relief is tempered by the sight of his fellow demon slayers, still in a deep, unmoving slumber, with children tied to their wrists. He notices his own wrist is bound by a rope that's been burned, the unsettling scent of a demon lingering on it. Tanjiro's mind races as he recalls the punch ticket and its familiar scent, realizing they've fallen victim to a blood demon art. Determined to free everyone, Tanjiro directs Nezuko to burn through the ropes, but his efforts to rouse Zenitsu and Inosuke are in vain. They remain unresponsive. As if the situation weren't dire enough, Tanjiro is suddenly attacked by a girl who was sent into Kyojuro's dream. Her eyes blaze with frustration as she tries to stab him with a menacing awl, her chance to disrupt the dream shattered. Joining her are the figures who attempted to kill Zenitsu and Inosuke, and the boy assigned to Tanjiro, who stands by but doesn't react. The chaos and anger in the air are palpable, adding to the tension of the moment. Tanjiro managed to knock out all his attackers, but he couldn't help but feel a pang of sorrow as he apologized. He told them with a heavy heart that he wished he could have stayed in his own dream, just as they had wanted to stay in theirs. As the last remaining boy approached him, he shared a heartfelt moment of gratitude. The boy explained how Tanjiro's soul had saved him and expressed deep regret for his own actions, driven by a desire to escape his illness. Stepping outside, Tanjiro was immediately struck by the overpowering stench of demons carried by the wind. Determined, he climbed to the top and came face to face with Enmu. The demon looked taken aback, clearly surprised that Tanjiro had managed to wake up from the dream. With a chilling tone, Enmu remarked that he could have shown Tanjiro far worse dreams, one where his family perished or another where he encountered his father alive. Enmu expressed his delight at seeing the anguished expressions of those trapped in their nightmares. He took pride in the intricate method he used for his special blood demon art. The tickets, infused with his blood, would ensure his victims fell asleep almost instantly, making his actions nearly invisible. However, he was left puzzled when Tanjiro managed to awaken despite his efforts. Tanjiro, furious over Enmu's intrusion into his family's memories, confronted him, seething with anger. Enmu's eyes lit up with excitement when he noticed Tanjiro's Hanafuda earrings. The realization that his target had come to him thrilled him, knowing it was a chance to acquire more of Muzan's precious blood. Tanjiro, wielding the water-breathing technique, launches forward with the 10th form, Constant Flux. In response, Enmu unleashes his blood demon art, the whispers of forced unconscious hypnosis, striking Tanjiro and plunging him into unconsciousness. Out of nowhere, Tanjiro springs back to life and launches an attack, compelling Enmu to swiftly evade his desperate slashes. Each time Tanjiro falls unconscious, he miraculously revives through his relentless attacks, and Enmu starts to grasp the chilling reality. Tanjiro is essentially committing suicide repeatedly just to regain consciousness and continue the fight. Enmu, with a sinister grin, plunges Tanjiro back into a nightmarish dream where the horrors of his past come to life. Tanjiro's family appears, bloodied and broken, and his father, resurrected from the dead, roars in fury, blaming Tanjiro for being the lone survivor of their tragic massacre. Instead of succumbing to fear, Tanjiro's rage ignites. He angrily declares that they would never utter such words. With a fierce resolve, he leaps into the air, unleashing his constant flux and decapitating Enmu with a swift strike. Though Tanjiro successfully slices through Enmu's neck, a gnawing worry tugs at him. Perhaps this victory was too easy. His fears are confirmed when Enmu's head, now regenerating flesh, latches onto the Mugen train's carriage. The lower one, mocking Tanjiro's belief in an easy win, takes delight in revealing that while Tanjiro and his fellow demon slayers were asleep, he had merged with the entire train. Enmu now holds the lives of 200 passengers in his grasp, daring Tanjiro to rescue them. Faced with the grim realization that he can only protect 2 carriages at a time, Tanjiro desperately calls out to his comrades to awaken. At that crucial moment, Nezuko manages to rouse Inosuke, who bursts from the roof with renewed vigor, proclaiming himself Lord Inosuke. Energized and fierce, he dives into the demonic train carriage, wielding his beast-breathing technique, Fifth Fang, crazy cutting, to slash through the monstrous flesh. After Tanjiro's failed attempt to defeat Enmu, he finds himself with the urgent task of rescuing the 200 passengers trapped on the train. Inosuke, having just woken up, immediately joins the fight. Enmu's flesh starts to invade the Mugen train's carriages, and horrifying tentacles begin to lash out, threatening the lives of the passengers. Inosuke leaps into action, his beast-breathing technique slicing through the tentacles with fierce precision. Outside, the nightmarish growths continue to spread, attacking Tanjiro and forcing him to fall back inside. As he faces the grotesque extent of Enmu's control over the train, Tanjiro attempts to use his water-breathing technique, aiming to cut down the relentless tentacles with the water surface. Despite his efforts, the tentacles keep multiplying. Enmu, watching from his twisted lair, feels a dark satisfaction. He revels in the fact that Tanjiro is exhausting himself on an enemy that can regenerate endlessly, hoping that Tanjiro's fatigue will soon make all of them easy targets. Nezuko, her size rapidly increasing, fights desperately against the tentacles that threaten the sleeping passengers. With every swipe of her claws and kick of her legs, she struggles to keep them at bay. But despite her fierce efforts, the sheer number of tentacles overwhelms her, binding her tightly. Just as hope seems lost, Zenitsu bursts onto the scene, wielding his thunder-breathing techniques. With his first form, Thunderclap and Flash Sixfold, he slices through the tentacles with astonishing speed, clearing them from the carriage in an instant. Tanjiro, still battling the relentless, regenerating tentacles, hears the clash of Zenitsu's attack. He deduces that Zenitsu has awakened and is now engaged in the fight. Meanwhile, Kyojuro, now awake, is struck by the horrifying sight of the demonic train. Feeling a wave of shame as a Hashira, he unleashes a powerful assault, catching Enmu off guard. The force of Kyojuro's attack severely damages the train, forcing Enmu to pause and focus on mending the damage. Tanjiro watches in relief as Kyojuro's intervention buys them some much-needed time. Kyojuro laid out the plan with clear determination. He would take responsibility for guarding the 5 rearmost cars, while Zenitsu and Nezuko were assigned to protect the front 3. Kyojuro emphasized that he and Inosuke would be on the lookout for the demon's head, stressing that no matter how Enmu might change his form, his head would still be somewhere to find. With a final nod, Kyojuro dashed off towards the back of the train. Tanjiro, admiring Kyojuro's swift and strategic thinking, quickly relayed the plan to Inosuke. Inosuke, already aware of the details, expressed his frustration at being given orders, but couldn't help but admire Kyojuro's leadership. He added that the demon's head was likely located near the front of the train. Without hesitation, Tanjiro leaped onto the roof to join Inosuke in the search. Inosuke, with a swift and decisive motion, slices through the roof of the locomotive and lands gracefully on the train's top. His gaze scans the area, briefly acknowledging the train engineer, but quickly shifting focus to search for the head. Tentacles suddenly erupt from all directions, ensnaring him in their grip. Just as things seem dire, Tanjiro arrives on the scene, wielding his water-breathing techniques with precision. With a powerful swing of water-breathing, 6th form, Whirlpool, Tanjiro slashes through the writhing tentacles, clearing a path for Inosuke. The intense assault near Enmu's head provokes a chilling shriek from the demon, causing the entire train to tremble uncontrollably. Inosuke, seizing the opportunity, employs beast breathing, 2nd Fang, slice, and deftly cuts into the train's floor. The blow reveals the vulnerable neck bone of Enmu, hidden beneath layers of flesh. Tanjiro, determined to finish the task, readies his water-breathing, 8th form, waterfall basin to sever the exposed neck bone. However, the demon's flesh regenerates at an alarming rate, forming a protective barrier against Tanjiro's strike. New tentacles sprout, expanding and encircling the front car of the train. Forced to rethink their strategy, Tanjiro grabs the train engineer and retreats to the 2nd car, leaving the rapidly regenerating flesh to encase the front car and safeguard the vital neck bone. Tanjiro urged Inosuke to synchronize their breathing, hoping to stay in sync during the fight. But suddenly, eerie eyes appeared right in front of them. It was Enmu's latest blood demon art, the eyes of forced unconscious sleep. As soon as it activated, it struck both Tanjiro and Inosuke. Tanjiro found himself slashing at his own neck again, but this was just a part of his dream. Even when he woke up, the eyes were still there, hitting him once more. Tanjiro felt a surge of frustration and self-reproach as he realized he'd fallen victim to the spell again. In his desperation, he took his own life again and lunged toward his neck. But each time he tried, the eyes reappeared, forcing him to face death repeatedly. Despite his eyes being closed, Tanjiro managed to get his blade close to his neck. Just as he was on the brink of ending it all, Inosuke intervened, stopping him. With a fierce determination, Inosuke told Tanjiro not to let himself die in such a pitiful way. Inosuke, seemingly oblivious to the mask he wore, began furiously slashing at the eyes. Meanwhile, Tanjiro came to a realization. The mask was keeping Enmu from figuring out where he was looking. Just then, the train engineer burst into the scene, brandishing a bone awl. Before the engineer could strike Inosuke, Tanjiro leaped in front, taking the blow to his own stomach. With a swift move, he knocked the train engineer out cold. But instead of showing gratitude, Inosuke, filled with anger, demanded that Tanjiro leave him to his fate. Tanjiro hesitates, unwilling to comply, but more tentacles reach out, ensnaring both of Inosuke's swords. Faced with the grim reality that their survival hinges on decapitating the demon, they resolve to proceed with their plan. Enormous tentacles, now sprouting multiple arms, reach out to ensnare the 2 demon slayers. They skillfully dodge and slash at the encroaching limbs, but the relentless tentacles continue to slam down onto the train, forcing Tanjiro and Inosuke to leap into the air to avoid being crushed. Working together, they manage to cut the tentacles to slow their descent. Yet, the eyes of the demon reappear, threatening to unleash their blood demon art. Inosuke, quick to act, slashes at the eyes before leaping down to the neck bone, obscuring Enmu's view. Channeling his beast breathing, 4th Fang. Slice and dice, he carves through the flesh around the neck, exposing the bone and creating an opening for their attack. As Tanjiro hurtles downward, a silent prayer escapes his lips, hoping for his father's protection as a fiery blaze consumes his breathing. With determination, he channels the Hinokami Kagura, clear blue sky, skillfully severing Enmu's neck and bringing about his decapitation. Fear grips Enmu as he faces the certainty of his own death. In a desperate attempt to harm the passengers, he reaches out with his arms, trying to seize them. But Kyojuro intervenes, fiercely cutting away Enmu's flesh with his flame breathing. The severed flesh separates from the train, but the violent jolt causes the train to veer off track at a terrifying speed. After Tanjiro managed to behead Enmu, the demon's flesh started to peel away from the cars. However, the lower ranks' agonized screams caused the Mugen train to derail at breakneck speed. The sudden jolt threw Tanjiro, Inosuke, and the unconscious train engineer into the air. In a frantic effort, Tanjiro tried to save the engineer from the impending disaster. As the train tumbled off the tracks and skidded violently to the ground, Tanjiro was thrown across the dirt, helpless and disoriented. Meanwhile, Inosuke miraculously landed on Enmu's discarded flesh and hurried over to his friend. With concern in his voice, he asked about Tanjiro's condition. Tanjiro, though able to respond, soon realized the severe wound on his stomach and the painful reality that rolling through the dirt had left him too injured to move. Tanjiro, filled with concern, asks whether the train engineer and the passengers are safe. Inosuke, still bristling with anger over the engineer's previous attack on Tanjiro, bitterly replies that the engineer is trapped, his legs pinned under the train cars. He grumbles that the man might never walk again, and, despite Tanjiro's pleas for help, refuses to assist, still harboring resentment. Tanjiro, desperate and imploring, reminds Inosuke that the engineer has already faced his punishment. Finally, swayed by his friend's earnestness, Inosuke reluctantly decides to help, working to free the trapped man. Exhausted but hopeful, Tanjiro rests, reassured that Nezuko, Zenitsu, and Kyojuro are safe. Unbeknownst to them, a small fragment of Enmu's flesh, slowly disintegrating amidst the wreckage, stirs with malevolence. As the piece writhes, Enmu curses himself for his failure to consume even one of the 200 passengers. With bitter resentment, he blames the flame Hashira for thwarting his sinister plan to devour them while he is fused with the train. In a fit of frustration, he curses Zenitsu, who had managed to fight him off even while still asleep. His confusion only deepens when he encounters Nezuko, a demon who surprises him by intervening. As he drags himself closer to the demon slayer who had defeated him, he mutters in dismay, blaming Tanjiro for ruining his plans and Inosuke for his sharp instincts. As his body starts to dissolve, he mourns the unfairness of it all, lamenting how only the lower ranks seem to meet their end, while the upper ranks manage to survive for centuries. In his final moments, Enmu is overwhelmed with dread at the thought of his impending death. He pleads desperately for another chance, gripped by the terrifying reality of his fate as he falls at last. Tanjiro finds himself unexpectedly approached by Kyojuro, who praises him for successfully mastering total concentration, constant. With a warm yet serious tone, Kyojuro explains that this achievement is merely the beginning on the path to becoming a Hashira. He advises Tanjiro to refine his control and breathing techniques further. Noting a troubling detail, Kyojuro informs Tanjiro that he has a torn blood vessel in his abdomen and helps him stop the bleeding internally. Encouragingly, the Hashira assures Tanjiro that he will be stronger than he was the day before and relieves him by confirming that no passengers were injured. Suddenly, a loud explosion erupts from behind them, shaking the air. As both Kyojuro and Tanjiro turn to see what happened, a figure emerges from the swirling dust. Tanjiro's gaze falls on the kanji in the figure's eyes, and a cold dread washes over him as he realizes they are facing an upper rank 3. The demon glanced at Tanjiro, and in the blink of an eye, vanished, lunging with a deadly intent to end him. Kyojuro, ever vigilant, anticipated the attack and struck swiftly, his sword enveloped in the fiery intensity of flame breathing. Second form, rising scorching sun. The demon recoiled, swiftly mending the wound as if it had never been there, and then, with a hint of admiration, praised Kyojuro's blade. With a furrowed brow, Kyojuro inquired why the demon had targeted the injured first. The demon's reply was surprisingly candid. He was concerned that Tanjiro might intervene in their exchange. Kyojuro, already feeling a deep sense of disdain, responds sharply, revealing that his dislike for the other person has taken root despite their brief encounter. Upper 3, in turn, expresses his repulsion for those he considers weak and suggests, with a hint of challenge, that Kyojuro should join him in becoming a demon. Kyojuro, firm in his resolve, turns down the offer. As the tension hangs in the air, Upper 3 inquires about Kyojuro's name and, with a smirk, introduces himself as Akaza. He then taunts Kyojuro, hinting that as a demon, he could spend centuries growing stronger and training. Meanwhile, Tanjiro, keenly observant, senses that the aura Akaza emits is the most overpowering he has encountered from any of Muzan's minions so far. Kyojuro, with a resolute gaze, shares with Akaza that aging and death are intrinsic to human existence. He emphasizes that true strength isn't solely about physical prowess. In response, Akaza retorts sharply, declaring that Tanjiro isn't weak and firmly refusing to revert to his demon form. Infuriated by this defiance, Akaza summons his blood demon art, enveloping himself in a menacing, glowing aura known as Technique Development, Destructive Death, Compass Needle. As he readies himself for the battle, Akaza warns Kyojuro that his stubbornness will only spell his doom. With a fierce determination, Akaza lunges forward, unleashing a flurry of attacks. Kyojuro meets each strike with skillful parries and counters. The intensity of their clash is so overwhelming that Tanjiro, unable to keep up, watches helplessly, too slow to grasp the full scope of the fight unfolding before him. Akaza, with a smirk full of disdain, taunts him, remarking that none of the Hashiras he has faced so far were flame Hashiras. He's puzzled and slightly irritated that every one of his previous victims had turned down his offer. Kyojuro, however, manages to sever Akaza's forearm in a swift, decisive move. Yet, in a show of his demonic resilience, Akaza's wound heals instantly, as if the injury had never been inflicted. With a sudden burst of energy, Akaza leaps into the air and unleashes destructive death, air type, sending a flurry of powerful shockwaves hurtling toward the Hashira. Kyojuro, undeterred, counters the assault with his flame-breathing technique, specifically the fourth form, Blooming Flame Undulation. Recognizing that a prolonged battle from a distance would be challenging, Kyojuro decides to close the gap. He rushes forward with determined speed, just managing to catch Akaza by the neck in a narrow but crucial moment. Akaza, showing no signs of worry, keeps up his relentless assault, taunting Kyojuro by suggesting that his skills would be a waste if he were to die. Despite the threats, Kyojuro remains steadfast, refusing to back down. Inosuke observes the fierce clash with intense focus, while Tanjiro struggles to stand up. Kyojuro, however, firmly tells them not to get involved. With a powerful move, Kyojuro sends Akaza flying into a nearby forest and manages to land another cut on Akaza's arm. Infuriated, Akaza retaliates with a vicious kick, hurling the Hashira forcefully into the ground. As Kyojuro lies there, Akaza goads him further, urging him to transform, while his previously injured arm heals instantly. Kyojuro once more refused, then sprang into the air. With a fiery determination, he used his flame-breathing, third form, Blazing Universe, to strike Akaza's chest. But the demon's wound healed in an instant, and he praised Kyojuro's fighting spirit before launching another destructive death, air-type shockwave, which barely missed Kyojuro. Inosuke, watching the intense battle with wide eyes, couldn't help but remark that the two fighters seemed to be on another level entirely. He knew that if he tried to join in, it would only lead to his own demise. Akaza kept trying to reach Kyojuro by talking about how pointless the fight was, but Kyojuro stood firm, refusing to give in. The upper-rank demon managed to make contact, starting with a cut to Kyojuro's forehead using the side of his fist. Determined, Kyojuro surged forward, twisting his body into the flame-breathing first form, Unknowing Fire. His attack sliced through both of Akaza's arms, but the demon regenerated immediately and kept attacking. Without warning, Akaza landed a powerful punch to Kyojuro's side, breaking his ribs. Though staggered and in pain, Kyojuro fought back fiercely. He used the second form, Rising Scorching Sun, slashing at Akaza's arms once more. Akaza managed to evade the incoming slice and aimed a powerful punch right at Kyojuro's face. Kyojuro's sword intercepted the blow, but Akaza pressed on, his hand slipping off and painfully striking Kyojuro's left eye, causing it to rupture. Despite the intense pain, Kyojuro continued to fight, employing his flame-breathing techniques. He quickly executed the third form, Blazing Universe, followed by the fourth form, Blooming Flame Undulation, desperately trying to land a hit on Akaza. The demon, however, leaped back to safety and assumed a new stance. Not giving up, Kyojuro unleashed the fifth form, Flame Tiger, sending a fiery wave toward Akaza. In response, Akaza used Destructive Death, Disorder, effortlessly dissipating the inferno and charging at Kyojuro with another powerful punch. Kyojuro stepped into the fray and delivered a slash to Akaza's arm. As the fire around him faded away, Inosuke, with a mixture of hope and worry, called out to see if Kyojuro had succeeded. Kyojuro, the flame Hashira, was now bleeding heavily from his wounds and struggling to catch his breath. Meanwhile, Akaza's sliced arm healed almost instantly, and he stood ready to continue the battle. Tanjiro could hardly believe his eyes. The mighty flame Hashira, who had always seemed invincible, was now grievously injured and facing an overwhelmingly powerful new enemy. Akaza, with a chilling calmness, urged Kyojuro not to die while they fought. Tanjiro and Inosuke could only watch in helpless despair. As the intense battle raged on, Kyojuro Rengoku valiantly defended against Upper 3 Akaza. Despite sustaining serious wounds, Rengoku fought bravely, while Akaza effortlessly healed his injuries. Rengoku's powerful flame-breathing, 5th form, Flame Tiger, was overpowered by Akaza's destructive technique, Destructive Death. Disorder. With a cruel smile, Akaza stepped back, leaving Rengoku to endure the excruciating pain. Meanwhile, Tanjiro and Inosuke watched in despair, unable to help as the mighty Hashira was slowly defeated by the relentless demon. Tanjiro, too drained from using Hinokami Kagura and weakened by his own injuries, could only witness the heartbreaking scene, powerless to intervene. Akaza tries to provoke Kyojuro, hoping to push him into transforming once more. While he's busy healing the severe wound on his own chest, he knows that Kyojuro's critical injuries are bound to be fatal unless Kyojuro becomes a demon himself. Suddenly, without any warning, flames burst around Kyojuro's body. Akaza, watching with a mix of confusion and intrigue, can't quite grasp the fierce determination in Kyojuro's eyes. Kyojuro, undeterred by the flames enveloping him, lifts his sword with unwavering resolve. He firmly declares his commitment to his duty, vowing not to let anyone die and to inflict as much damage on Akaza as he can in a single moment. Channeling his inner strength, Kyojuro employs the powerful flame-breathing esoteric art, readying himself for battle once more. Akaza's excitement was palpable as he declared his determination to become a demon, deeply moved by his own relentless spirit despite his grievous injuries. With a fervent whisper to himself, "Set your heart ablaze. Go beyond your limits." Kyojuro embraced his role as the Flame Hashira and unleashed the powerful 9th form, Rengoku. In response, Akaza unleashed his own formidable attack, Destructive Death, Annihilation type. Kyojuro charged forward, transforming into a colossal, fiery dragon that clashed with Akaza's barrage of shockwaves. Amid the tumultuous battle, Kyojuro managed to slice through Akaza's arm and deliver 2 fierce blows to his chest. Yet, as the flames died down, Tanjiro watched in horror as Akaza's fist pierced Kyojuro's solar plexus. While the demon's injuries rapidly healed, he coldly taunted the Hashira, knowing that this final devastating wound would seal Kyojuro's fate. Kyojuro suddenly finds himself lost in a memory of his mother, Ruka, from his childhood. The image of her appears vividly in his mind, transporting him back to a precious moment before her passing. In that heartfelt conversation, she had explained to him why he seemed stronger than others. When he couldn't provide an answer, Ruka gently revealed that his strength was meant to shield those who were weaker. "It is the duty of those born strong to protect the weak," she had said, her words shaping his resolve as a Hashira. With a loving embrace, Ruka hugged Kyojuro tightly, tears welling up in their eyes. She expressed her gratitude, saying she felt blessed to have such a strong and kind-hearted son. The memory of that tender moment floods back to Kyojuro as he fights, giving him renewed strength. As he grips his sword, he channels his energy into a decisive strike, driving his blade into Akaza's neck. In his heart, he feels a profound sense of honor, telling her silently that he is deeply grateful to have had her as a mother. With a surge of determination, he pushes his sword even deeper, embodying the promise he made to her. Akaza, desperate and furious, tries to land a punch with his free hand. However, the Demon Slayer, with surprising strength and skill, catches his fist mid-air, leaving the demon stunned and bewildered. As the sun begins to peek over the horizon, fear grips Akaza's heart. He struggles to break free, but Kyojuro's grip is unyielding, determined not to let him go. Even though he's badly injured, Tanjiro disregards his pain and rushes to fetch his sword, driven by the urgency to help Kyojuro finish off Akaza. As the first rays of sunlight start to creep in, Akaza's desperation grows. He fights even more fiercely to escape, but Kyojuro holds firm, their struggle locked in a tense and unrelenting standoff. Tanjiro, feeling the weight of urgency for Kyojuro's sake, implores Inosuke to act swiftly. Although not as gravely injured as Tanjiro, Inosuke's determination propels him forward. He charges toward Akaza with fierce resolve, leaping into the air and unleashing beast-breathing, First Fang, Pierce in a bold attempt to strike the formidable upper-rank demon. However, the situation turns grim as Akaza, with a brutal display of power, tears Kyojuro's arms away from his body and slams his foot onto the ground. The force of the impact sends shockwaves rippling through the air, knocking Inosuke back and disrupting Tanjiro's own efforts to launch an attack. As the sun begins to rise, its glaring light forces Tanjiro to shield his eyes. Realizing the peril, he retreats into the forest, seeking refuge and safety from the overwhelming threat. In a moment of sheer desperation, Tanjiro's resolve intensifies. He channels the fiery energy of the Hinokami Kagura, his breath fueling a surge of strength. With a determined heart, he hurls his blade toward Akaza, the weapon slicing through the air and piercing the demon's chest with a burst of fierce determination. Tanjiro, filled with anger and frustration, shouts at Akaza, accusing him of cowardice for running away. His voice trembles with rage as he demands that Akaza face him instead of retreating. The harsh words only serve to fuel Akaza's fury, who mutters that he was fleeing from the sun, not from Tanjiro. With a scowl, Akaza declares that the battle is over, convinced that Kyojuro's death is imminent as he successfully evades the sunlight. Despite the grim reality, Tanjiro's voice rises with fierce determination. He reminds everyone that the demon slayers have always faced demons under the cover of night when the odds are stacked against them. They fight on even when their wounds won't heal swiftly, and their limbs don't regenerate. Overcome with emotion, Tanjiro shouts that Kyojuro is the true hero of their battle. He praises Kyojuro for his strength, his refusal to let anyone perish, and his relentless spirit until the very end. As he speaks, his tears flow uncontrollably, his heart breaking for the fallen warrior. Inosuke feels a pang of worry as he watches Tanjiro struggle to keep his composure. The sight of Tanjiro's distress visibly unsettles him. Meanwhile, Kyojuro, though his own strength is fading, manages to offer a soft, reassuring smile at Tanjiro's words. He gently advises him to calm down, reminding him that shouting could risk reopening his own wound. Kyojuro then extends an invitation to Tanjiro for one last meaningful conversation before his time comes. He recalls a dream he had on the train, which brought back memories of his father often poring over notes left by the previous Flame Hashira. These notes might hold crucial details about Hinokami Kagura that he was unaware of. With this thought, he encourages Tanjiro to visit the Rengoku home to search for these notes. As the first light of dawn breaks through, Akaza's severed arm is consumed by flames and turns to ash, while Kyojuro's own wound continues to bleed more rapidly. Even as Tanjiro desperately urged him to stop the bleeding, Kyojuro, with a calm and steady demeanor, acknowledged that his time was drawing near. Instead of focusing on the pain, he chose to use his final moments to share some heartfelt advice. He asked Tanjiro to pass on a message to his younger brother, Senjuro. He wanted Senjuro to follow his heart and walk the path he believed was right. He also wanted Tanjiro to tell his father to take good care of himself. Kyojuro, despite his suffering, expressed his acceptance of Nezuko as a true member of the Demon Slayer Corps. He recognized her bravery, noting that she had fought valiantly to save the passengers even while she was bleeding. Kyojuro, despite grappling with his own feelings of inadequacy and self-doubt, encourages Tanjiro with heartfelt words. Set your heart ablaze. He reminds Tanjiro that time will keep moving forward, and that there's no need to be overwhelmed by the thought of his own death. He finds solace in knowing he has served as a Hashira and protected those he cared about. Turning to Tanjiro, Inosuke, and Zenitsu, Kyojuro expresses his deep belief in them. He entrusts them with the hope of becoming the future Hashira of the Demon Slayer Corps. Just then, a vision of his mother, Ruka, appears before him. Kyojuro, filled with both hope and longing, asks her if he has done his duty. With warmth in her gaze, Ruka reassures him that she is indeed proud of him. This moment fills Kyojuro with a radiant smile, and with a sense of fulfillment, he gently gives in to his injuries. Zenitsu, trembling and visibly shaken, walks up to Tanjiro and Inosuke. With a heavy heart, he shares that Kyojuro had heroically saved the train from suffering even more damage when it derailed. Overwhelmed by the gravity of the situation, Zenitsu's voice cracks as he asks, almost pleadingly, if an upper-rank demon truly appeared. Tanjiro, his face somber, confirms the harsh reality. The weight of the moment becomes too much for Zenitsu. Tears well up in his eyes as he laments that, despite having mastered one challenge, yet another seemingly insurmountable obstacle has emerged before him. The trio stands there, on the brink of breaking down, their emotions raw and exposed. Tanjiro silently wonders if he could ever reach the same level of strength and bravery as Kyojuro. Feeling the intensity of Tanjiro's internal struggle, Inosuke, though fighting back his own tears, erupts with frustration. He faces his friend, Kyojuro, and in a voice tinged with both anger and anguish, he demands that Tanjiro stop wallowing in self-pity. Inosuke, his own eyes glistening with tears, insists that grieving for those who have passed won't bring them back. He urges his friends to push forward, to honor Kyojuro's sacrifice by continuing their fight. The raw, heartfelt plea echoes through the air as Inosuke, too, allows his emotions to flow freely. As Zenitsu speaks, Inosuke's reaction is to headbutt him, yet his tears flow relentlessly as the three friends grieve the loss of Kyojuro. The news of Kyojuro's death and Akaza's appearance reaches the Demon Slayer Corps through Kyojuro's Kasugai Crow. The Kasugai Crows then inform the Hashira, each reacting in their own way. Shinobu and Kanao are overcome with sadness, their faces reflecting their deep sorrow. Mitsuri stands stunned, her shock evident at the news of Kyojuro's death. He remains silent, his response subdued. Tengen struggles to grasp reality, unable to believe that even Kyojuro was unable to defeat an upper-ranked demon. Obanai, in disbelief, refuses to accept the truth. Gyome turns to prayer, seeking solace for Kyojuro's soul. Genya is left in utter shock, while Sanemi, fueled by his anger, vows to destroy every demon he encounters. Giyu, though surprised, quietly accepts the grim reality of the situation. Kagaya Ubuyashiki learns that all 200 passengers have survived, and a wave of relief washes over him. He reflects on Kyojuro with a sense of admiration, calling him a remarkable child. Although Kyojuro's death could have been deeply upsetting, Kagaya's impending departure to the afterlife softens his sorrow. The thought of soon joining Kyojuro in the land of the dead brings a quiet resignation to his heart.